Hey everyone, Merry Christmas. Today is December 25th, 2025. Title of this video, Multiple Watch Dates, The Washington Connection. So this all began connecting to this video that I talked about, the Cascadia earthquake affecting the state of Washington. I made a video and talked about the movie Sleepless in Seattle, the connections, and I made this video on November 18th. So one of the watch dates that I talked about was the next day, November 19th. But I want to focus a little bit on the day that I made the video, because on the day that I made the video, it's exactly 17,000 weeks since the Cascadia earthquake, happened in the year 1700. So we have this big 17 connection on the day that I made the video. And the exact same day that I made this video, Decoding with Cody was talking about the number 17. Ben Hutton wore number 17. John Cena, 17 titles. But it's not just that. He made a bet with free money on Ben Hutton, number 17, who had plus 1,700 odds, and it was 1,700 weeks exactly from Ben Hutton's birthday to this day, November 18th, and Ben Hutton scored a goal. Odds stacked against him to score a goal, right? And Cody is actually from the 17th state. So this crazy organic synchronicity with, the exact same day that I'm talking about the Cascadia earthquake, 17,000 weeks old, happened in the year 1700. And again, he makes this bet on number 17 that actually happens to score a goal, 1,700 weeks. So I didn't know what to make of that. The connection, between the video that I made, it was really strange. But then something happened after that, an actual event connecting the number 17 to a big flood in Washington. And that was the big floods that began in Washington on December 8th. So December 8th, a series of severe floods impacted rivers and lowlands in the Pacific Northwest, particularly western Washington. So this exact same day, December 8th, was the birthday of Philip Rivers, who wore number 17. He was retired at this time. Philip Rivers, right? But then 2 days later, they declared a state of emergency in Washington from these floods, and Philip Rivers is signed out of retirement by Indianapolis on the same day, December 10th. So the floods happen on his birthday, and he's signed 2 days later when they declared the state of emergency. So, it's just crazy that I'm talking about this, this earthquake that could cause a water event, a flood, a tsunami affecting Washington, connecting with the number 17. And I didn't even talk about 17 in my video, but it just happened to connect with the day that I made it, and Cody making this bet on number 17. And then we have this flood in Washington connecting to Philip Rivers, number 17. Then he was talking about John Cena, has 17 titles. But he ended his career, John Cena. Again, I'm talking about whether it's state of Washington or Washington, D.C. It's all about the Washington connection, this video. So he ended his career in Washington, D.C. He was choked out by a man named Gunther. Well, this was the day before the anniversary that George Washington died, December 14th. And we had this Bondi Beach shooting in Australia. mass shooting. Several people were killed in this. And like I said, he was choked out by a man with the name Gunther. It started with Gun in Washington, D.C. And we had this mass shooting on George Washington's death date. So another event connecting with Washington. And now I'm going to talk about some watch dates that I'm looking at. The next one is December 27th. Well, that happens to be December 14th on the Julian calendar, which is obviously, again, the Washington death date connection. But this is also 88 years, 8 months, and 8 days after the Golden Gate Bridge was completed, and actually had 88 date numerology on the day that it opened. So on this 88th anniversary this year, we had John Tenta, the Earthquake, being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And Earthquake Splash was one of his special moves, which equals 88. Well, it just so happens that earlier this year, we had an 8.8 magnitude earthquake, which sent a tsunami into the coast of Russia and Japan and Alaska on July 30th. And that was 88 years, 8 weeks, 8 days after the Golden Gate Bridge opened. So, again, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, the 88th anniversary earthquake wrestler, and we're looking at this date, 88 years, 8 months, 8 days. We already seen the 8-8 connection to the earthquake with July 30th. We're looking at this date again. So in Google, I went in Google and just typed in Tsunami wrestler, right, and see what I could find. And the first thing that pops up, the first name was Bronson Reed. I went to his Wikipedia page, and the one area where it talks about Tsunami in this Wikipedia page, it says he attacked Seth Rollins with hitting him with 6 tsunami splashes. So on this date, August 5th, 2024, that this happened, to the date that we're looking at, December 27th, 509 days. Well, that's the 97th prime, and tsunami also equals 97. And by the way, one of the largest earthquakes in history actually hit Alaska in 1964 on Good Friday, and that caused a large tsunami, and we have this big 322 code to that event. So since I'm talking about the Washington connection, well, the very next day, December 28th, is Denzel Washington's birthday, who he probably is currently the most famous person with the name Washington who is alive right now, right? Denzel Washington. And I got this connection to Denzel Washington's birthday, or December 29th, this 292 connection. So that will be exactly 292 weeks time span after George Floyd died. We just had the death of Charlie Kirk, who shared the same birthday as George Floyd, right? And Charlie Kirk was killed exactly 292 weeks after Kirk Douglas. And I talked about the date that George Floyd died, May 25th, and I was talking about next year. I made a video about this. I talked about, will Vance be the next president? I named 3 dates, and I had a lot of big connections to next year, Memorial Day, May 25th. And this will also be 29200 days after Trump was born. And I also have this connection with the Pope, the current Pope, 292 Mercury years he'll be on January 11th, which is also 8888 days after 9/11. And by the way, 292 months equals 8888 days. But that's the connection to December 28th or the 29th without the end date included. But the 29th is also 8 months, 8 days after Pope Francis died. And 1229 is the 201st prime. And Pope Francis had a big connection to the number 201 as well. His name equals 201. He stayed in Suite 201. And so I got a lot of big connections to New Year's Eve. That will be exactly 86,000 days after Washington, D.C. was founded. Again, the Washington connection, 86,000, like 86 is to get rid of something. You know, is somebody going to be 86th on New Year's Eve? Well, again, John Cena's last match, he was defeated in Washington, D.C. the day before Washington's death date. Again, in Washington's death date, we had this big mass shooting in Australia. He was defeated by a man with the name Gunther, G-U-N in the name. And now we got this connection to New Year's Eve, connecting to Washington, D.C., 86,000, right? To 86 to get rid of. And speaking of guns, if we look at the assault weapons ban to December 31st, it's 7780 days. Well, 8888, again with this 88 connection, December 31st as 88 numerology. Well, 8888 is the 7780 composite number. The amount of days from when the assault weapons ban expired in 2004. But New Year's Eve is also the birthday of Donald Trump Jr., and he will turn 48 years old. But look at this. I'm talking about the connection with John Cena, Washington, D.C., and the Washington, D.C. connection to December 31st. Donald Trump, who is the current president, who lives in Washington, D.C., and his son, Donald Trump Jr., it's his birthday. Well, Donald Trump Jr. was born exactly 8 months, 8 days after John Cena. This date has 88 date numerology. It will also be 48 weeks since the year of the snake began. And what happened on the day the year of the snake began? We had the big plane crash colliding with the helicopter in Washington, D.C. 48 weeks. Donald Trump Jr. will turn 48 years old. By the way, the number 223 is the 48th prime number. Skull and bones. But back to Denzel Washington, again, he connects with the 71-3 to December 31st. 71 years, 3 days old he'll be. And this is the day, 7/13, that Trump was shot in the ear, supposedly, right? July 13th. He was shot by Thomas Crooks, who was born on 9/20/2003. And this number is the 8888th prime number. And Trump also equals 88, right? So back on November 4th, Donald Trump made this post, and so it begins. And so it begins equals 57. So, and he said this with the date 57 days remaining in the year. So obviously 57 days later after he said this will be New Year's Eve. But, and so it begins also equals 213 and 78, just like Donald Trump Jr., 213 and 78. Again, it will be Donald Trump Jr.'s birthday on December 31st, 57 days after he says this, and so it begins, equals 57. And by the way, this is from the movie The Two Towers, so it begins, that's what he says. Actually, it looks like he says and silent, so it looks like he does say and so it begins, but anyways, The Two Towers, right? That makes you think of 9/11, the attacks on the Twin Towers. Well, on the exact day that Trump said, and so it begins, there was a plane crash, Flight 2976. Well, this is just one number off. 2977 were the amount of people killed in the 9/11 attacks. So we have one number off the same day that Trump says, and so it begins. The two towers, that's what they say in the movie, and so it begins. And the date that this released, the two towers, was December 18th in 2002. Well, look what happened on December 18th. We got another plane crash, and that was Greg Biffle. Same day as the two towers released. Trump made the post, and so it begins, referring to the movie The Two Towers. We had a plane crash. Then the date the movie released, we had the plane crash. And again, we have the Washington connection. Vancouver, Washington. That's where he was from. This plane crash actually happened in South Carolina or North Carolina. But this was also one day after, this man, the birthday, he says, and so it begins. It's one day after his birthday, December 17th. And speaking of plane connections, the FAA will happen to be 808 months and 8 days old on December 31st. And we have this connection with Trump, too, because back on August 9th, 2024, Trump's plane suffered a mechanical issue before landing. And that was 509 days apart from December 31st. Well, that is the 97th prime and plane crash, as well as I showed you guys, Tsunami also equals 97. There's even some connections with Obama's movie, Leave the World Behind, which was all about a cyber attack, and there's also a plane crash in this movie. But at the end of the movie, this little girl goes into this bunker, and it was made by Commodus survival shelters. Commodus died on December 31st. And this will be 2 years, 23 days since this movie released on Netflix. Again, this will be Donald Trump's 48th birthday. 223 is the 48th prime. It will be 48 weeks after the plane crash in Washington, D.C., the year the snake began. And we have this 223 connecting to Obama's movie. But, so there's a little girl who went to this Commodus bunker, picked out a movie, and played the last series of Friends. And if you look at Matthew Perry, from his death date to December 31st, we have the 223 connection again, just like Obama's movie. And now look at, from the day that this girl was born, a time span to December 31st is also has another 223 connection. 20 years, 2 months, and 3 days. One thing, I didn't put a slide in here, but we also have a 223 connecting to the recent total solar eclipse over the U.S. Since the April 8th, 2024 eclipse, it'll be 20 months and 23 days. And that movie was all about, again, the blackout and stuff, a cyber attack happening. And if you look at the U.S. Department of Energy to December 31st, there is a very interesting connection because we have 201 Mercury years connecting that. So to get into my next watch date that has another Washington connection, there's a tie-in to this anniversary, 84th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. So this was being talked about because it was 9/11/01 days, just like the 9/11/01 attacks, from the day that the Declaration of Independence was adopted to December 7th, the 84th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, right? And so I had this big 9/11 connection to this. And I even talked about this because it had a big 9/11 connection to my birthday, right? 19011. And even the date of my birthday, 11/20. 11/20th prime is the 911th. Equals 911, right? And I want to share this again, the synchronicity with Decoding with Cody, what he shared on with Rambo and AJ Ball Don't Lie. So he talked about he had to fly. He was actually forced to fly in this day. He couldn't fly in any other day, right? And there was this big 9/11 connection with the, I showed you my birthday and the Declaration of Independence being adopted. And he landed, again, we got this Washington connection. He landed in Washington, D.C. at 9:11 p.m. the same day. Now, if we look at the date that the Declaration of Independence was actually signed, it was signed on August 2nd, 1776. We go forward 91101 days, we land on January 5th. Look what we have. Another Washington connection, because this is the skull and bones number in sidereal months after George Washington died. 3,022 months, sidereal months, right? But it doesn't end there, because look at the state of Washington will be 49,729 days old. The time span, or without the time spans, to January 6th, January 5th, January 6th. But what is this number? It's 223 squared. 223 times 223. George Washington death was 3,022 sidereal months. Again, the connection with Washington State. The governor of Washington, born on 2/23, and he will be 22232 days. Remember, I talked about the skull and bones number. I always say it's 1, 3, multiple twos. Since I've been following the 9/11 attacks, that's what I showed you guys. It's not just a straight 322 or 223. It's 1, 3, multiple twos. That's what they like to encode when they refer to the skull and bones connection. I've kind of already proven that with the connections that I showed you guys from 9/11. So this, again, will connect to January 5th, January 6th. With a guy who was born on 223, right? The governor born on 223. Washington State will be 223 times 223. George Washington will be 3,022 sidereal months old. So again, we got the big Washington connection. And this date will be 91101 days after the Declaration of Independence was actually signed on August 2nd. And if you go back to, again, with John Cena, he ended his last time as now match. Remember, he ended his last match in Washington, D.C., but he ended his last time as now match on December 5th, which was 23 years, 23 weeks. This number 23 is because he was celebrating 23 years of wrestling in wrestling WWE, right? And from his last match in Washington, D.C. to January 5th, where I got the Washington connections, well, that's 23 days. And I want to point out another 23 connection to the date that his last time is now match ended on December 5th. 2 months and 3 days to the day the Super Bowl will happen. And what happens on the Super Bowl? Well, we have this, again, a big Washington connection. 7109 weeks since the state of Washington was founded. Well, that is the 911th prime. What's another big event recently that you can think of that happened in Washington? How about the earthquake in 2001? The 6.8 earthquake. Well, also on Super Bowl Sunday, it will be 9111 days since this earthquake happened. Anyways, guys, these are the connections I wanted to show you and share with you guys. I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas, and I will talk to you in the next video. Take care.